So, right, so I hope you are all, I'm assuming that you are all black belts in Kabbalah. So we will be taking perhaps a slightly deeper look into some of the ideas behind Purim, but specifically we're going to focus on Amolek. Who is he and why is he so angry? Let's have a look. So, we know who he was historically. He's a grandson of Esau, and he grows up, and it's really important for us to realize he grows up in Yitzchak's house, and we'll come back to that. That is really important in understanding who he is. But he's an angry young man. He's really not happy, and he's very, very angry with us. And we need to understand why he is so angry with us. So let's begin to look at Bilam. Bilam is the one that sees Amolek, and that's our first source on page 1. I'm not sure if they've got our page numbers here. Okay, but you follow it. Vayares Amolek vayisom sholoi vayoymar. So Bilam sees Amolek, and he has a lot to say about Amolek. And listen to what he says about him. Reishis Goyim Amolek. Amolek is the first of the nations. He stands at the head of the whole community of nations. We're also Reishis. We are Reishis to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he is our nemesis. Reishis Goyim Amolek. Va'acharisoi adei oived. But at the end of the day, he will be totally and utterly wiped out. He has no future. He has so much potential. He is Reishis Goyim Amolek, but Acharisoi Adei Oived. He will end up being absolutely nothing. And here I want to stop and introduce our first theme for Purim. And that theme is eternity, Nitzchius versus oblivion. Nothingness. That is our first theme. He is bursting with potential. Reishis Goyim Amolek. He stands at the head of this structure called Goyim, and yet he has no future. Acharisoi adei oived. He will be finished. Before we go any further, it's worth pointing out, the Shloh HaKodesh and others point out, there is a posuk we say every day in davening. Ki rega ba'apoi chayim beretzoinoi. We contrast life and existence with Hashem's anger, his kas. And we say, rega ba'apoi. There only needs to be a tiny fragment of time for Hashem being angry, whereas chayim, continued existence, is beretzoinoi as a result of his positive, conscious rotzoin. And we'll come back to that. But the Shloh points out, look back at this posuk, Reishis Goyim Amolek, the first letters spell out rega. That's who he is. He is the rega ba'apoi. Anger, and he has in English we say he has a fleeting existence, a very small window of existence, and then he is wiped out. No wonder he's angry. Of course, I would also be angry. If I had the potential to be a Reishis Goyim and I ended up being a moment in time, Rega, Reishis Goyim Amolek, but what's going on? Why is this? Says the Zohar, there's an incredible Zohar which says that the word Amolek is actually made up of half of the word of Bilam and half of the word of Balak. He comes from the Am of Bilam and the Lak from Balak. And what we're left with, by the way, once you've taken that away, what you're left with is Bovel, which is where the Purim story unfolds. Well, Poras and Modai, but it leads into Bovel. What is going on? What does this mean? It means Amolek has many things. He is Reishis Goyim, but he does not have Malchus. He doesn't have kingship. What he wants is to annihilate and destroy us. But he is not melech or malchus. Nowhere is Amolek discussed in terms of being a melech or malchus. He just wants to get rid of us. The other nations, the four classic stages of Golus, what do they want? They take away from us. We had malchus, we had kingship. Each of them, Bovel, Poras, Modai, Yovon, Edom, they take, imagine like in the Olympics, yes? You have a torch or you have the baton. You take it and you pass it on to somebody else, and you pass it on to somebody else. The Maharal explains that is what these four stages of Golus are. They take Malchus away from us until we get it back with Melech HaMashiach. Amolek is not interested in that. He just wants to destroy us. And when these two come together, a Bilam and a Balak, one who just wants to destroy us, and the other one who wants our power and our sovereignty, together that creates Amolek. That's the fusion of the Bilam and the Balak, and that's what comes together with Achashverosh later and Haman. Let's see. The Gemara said, well, let's talk a little bit about Bilam. What did Bilam want to do? He wanted to find that tiny little moment of anger, pure, undiluted anger that Hashem has every single day. The Pasuk says, Eil zo'em b'chol yom. There is a tiny little moment of anger. It's actually 1 out of 58,888 of an hour. The Gemara in Brachos gives it a very precise definition. And Bilam had the ability to find that moment. And in that moment, he would have cursed us, and it would have been big danger. But, says the Gemara, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in those days, didn't become angry. Let's stop and think about what that means. Why anger? Why does Hashem have to be angry every day? First of all, he doesn't have emotions. That's another story. But what does it mean? This is what it means. Hashem created the world. He created the world using the agency of din, judgment, justice. And here I need to explain this to you. I'll do it as simply as I can, but we need to get this in order to move forward. There is a midah called chesed, expansiveness, gedula, which is giving and giving and giving. It doesn't look at whether you deserve or not. It looks only at giving and giving. That is chesed. It has an exact opposite, which is called din, gevura, judgment, justice. Only those things which are totally justified. And then Hashem created the world with din, Bereshis bara Elokim, that's the name used with judgment and justice. And then he introduced rachamim. Rachamim, we'll come back to that word in a minute. Rachamim is a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Avraham is outstanding in the midah of chesed, of pure giving. Yitzchak is the exact opposite, only not taking, but justifying his own existence. Which is why he's always laughing, Yitzchak, because the absurdity of his own existence. He came from a mother who had no womb. He died at the Akedah and was resurrected. And he knew Tchias HaMesim. His ashes are still there. He's just an impossible, it's one big cosmic joke. And therefore he has no expectations. Everything has to be utterly deserved. And this is the house Amolek grew up in. But of course, you and I cannot live with absolute din. Nobody can live and exist with absolute din. But in order to keep the balance, there is this thing called rachamim. We can't today go into it in depth, it will take too long. Rachamim is a mixture of chesed and din. These three ideas are represented by Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Avraham is chesed, giving. Yitzchak is din, and Yaakov is a bit of his father and a bit of his grandfather. Rachamim. A bit of chesed and a bit of din, which is why, by the way, we just haven't Mariv. Mariv, Shachris corresponds to Avraham. Yitzchak corresponds to din, and Mariv corresponds to Yaakov, which is why we started with the words Vahu Rachum, because it is Rachamim. That is what Yaakov is. And therefore, in the world, every day, Hashem has to give, as it were, din, a tiny little slice of justification of existence. You can't deny it totally. There is that tiny moment, that tiny window, and Bilam wanted to zero in on that window, but Hashem For those days that he tried to, Hashem didn't allow him. There was no anger at all. Let's think about Amolek. He's Esau's grandchild. He grows up in the house of Yitzchak. Everything is midas hadin. Everything has to be justified. And therefore he says to himself, and this is where it goes horribly wrong. He says to himself, if I, in the house of Yitzchak, I exist, and I can keep existing, that means I must be. I have to continue existing. If everything must exist through din, then my existence is absolute. In his worldview, there is no room for rachamim, there is no room for chesed, there is nothing. Only pure din. The Maharal says very beautifully, the word for womb, rechem, is the same letters as mochar. The womb allows for a tomorrow. In the world of din, there is no tomorrow. Who says there's a tomorrow? It is only in the world of rachamim that there can be a rechem, there can be a womb that can create a potential for a machar. But if you get it wrong, of course, cherem, the letters are switched around and you end up with nothingness. Let's understand this a little bit deeper. Let me take you into the world of Amolek properly and why he is so annoyed with us. And I will add, for good reason. He has a good reason. He's right to be angry with us. Amolek, say the Mekubalim, the gematria of Amolek is 240, which is the same gematria as Safek, as doubt. Notice, the word Safek will never appear in the Torah, in the Chumash, because in the world of Torah, of absolute existence, either something is or it isn't. It's binary. Remember these words. What are the Hebrew words for something is or it isn't? There can be no doubt. In a world of reality, doubt only exists in our mind. It's not a reality. Doubt means I don't know. But in the world of Torah, which is the world of the absolute, in the Chumash, there is no word safek, because there is no safek. Things either are or they are not. Yesh or ayin. 0 or 1. Binary. Either things are or they are not. There's no safek, there's no doubt. Only in the Mishnah do we find this word safek. Why? Because in halacha, we have to deal with human beings, and human beings are full of doubts. They don't know. I don't know, is this kosher, is it not kosher? So in Mishnaic Hebrew, a word comes in called safek, but that is the gematria of Amolek. Where's the first time we find Haman in the Torah? Bottom of the page, says the Gemara. Hamin ha'etz. Leaving aside, we don't have time tonight to talk about the tree, and he gets hung and all that stuff, and the Eitz Hadas. Leave all that aside. But he is no more than a question mark. Hamin, it's just a question. Haman min ha-Torah minayin, asks the Gemara. Where is Haman in the Torah? And the answer is he can't be anywhere permanently in the Torah because he is not going to have a permanent existence. He's going to disappear. So the maximum he can be is one big fat question mark. Hamin, he can try and introduce doubt. That's all he can do. The question is, what does he doubt? What is it actually that he doubts? We're over to the second page. And here we discover something amazing. We discover something really, really important. And this is the first time we come across Amolek. At the end of Parshas B'Shalach, we come to a place called Refidim, and we start doing what we are oh so good at. Kvetching. That's how it says in Yiddish. I don't know how in German does it work? No? What? I'll take your word for it. I like the Yiddish. We kvetch. It's a good Yiddish. We've elevated it. It's an Olympic sport. Kvetching. So there was no water. So what do? Look at the top line. Al nasoisom as Hashem leimor hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu im ayin. Is God amongst us or isn't He? Hello. And the next pasuk is Vayovay Amolek. You introduce doubt. Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu, is God with us or not? Vayovay Amolek. This is, if it was theater, it would be, this is his cue. Enter, stage left, enter Amolek. Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu imayin, is God with us, is He not? Doubt? You doubt whether Hashem is with you? Safek? Vayovay Amolek. But look at those words, Hayesh and Ayin. Existence or non-existence. The first time we find them together in the Torah is, of course, back to the Gan Eden. Vayomer Hashem Elikim leisha, Mazoi sosisa, what have you done? God says to Chava, what is this you've done? And she says, the Nachash, who is connected to Amolek and Haman in ways we can't talk about tonight, HaNachash Hishiani, which means he persuaded me. But look at that word, Hishiani, it is Hayesh Ayin. There's your first doubt. He persuaded me. He said, yeah, eat from the tree, you'll continue to live. Remember, we're also, all of that discussion in Gan Eden was revolving around what? Will you continue to exist? Eat from the tree and you'll exist forever. That's what the Nachash is trying to say. And what happened? She ate and we have death. Always continuing to exist versus disappearing, at least temporarily. Now let's see what's going on over here. The doubt is as follows. A sensitive ear will pick up in this posuk the following incredibly important idea. We do not doubt Hashem, nor does Amolek doubt the existence of Hashem, as I will prove to you shortly. But we said, do you know what the worst form of doubt is? Self-doubt. Hayesh Hashem bekirbeinu. Is Hashem amongst us, inside every Yid? Do I, as a Jew, maybe even a simple Jew, do I have the ability, the right to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Who am I? I'm nobody, I'm nothing. That's exactly what Amolek wants. Hayesh Hashem bekirbeinu. Is Hashem inside of us? Or ayin, there is nothingness. Look at Rashi over here. The big quote over here. I put it in bold. Vayovoy Amolek, says Rashi, this is your fridge magnet. This is a fridge magnet. Tomid ani beinechem umezuman l'chol tzarchechem. Says Hashem, I am always amongst you and ready to do everything and anything that you want. And you doubt me. And the Medrash gives a moshel. Rashi brings a Medrash, he gives an analogy of a kid on his father's shoulders. And the kid, they're walking down the road, the father's got the kid on his shoulders, and there comes somebody and the kid shouts out and says, tell me, have you seen my dad? Do you know where my dad is? Anybody seen my father? You're on your father's shoulders. Says the father, oh really? You don't think I'm here? I'm going to put you down. Miyad bo hakelev, the dog comes, v'noishech, and the kelev will come and bite and create problems. And that is Amolek. Amolek is a dog, again, for reasons we can't go into this evening. That is what this is about. So what Amolek does is, he introduces into us self-doubt. That is his job. His job is to point out we are not worthy of connecting. But we're not finished yet. We're going to show why we are not worthy, because Amolek has actually a very good point. It's not so simple. And in case you were worried, well, sure you weren't, but in case you were worried that Amolek, maybe he just doubts everything, look at the next quote, is a Medrash Tanchuma, which is a bit of a gruesome one, please forgive me, it's very explicit. When we were fighting there, it says, Vayizanev b'cho kol hanechesholim acharecha. Now that's a very unusual word, Vayizanev. By the way, if you turn, remember this for later, the more sensitive ear will hear, Vayizanev has the same letters as Bizayon. We'll see if we get time to come back to that. But Vayizanev means Zanav means a tail. Now, a tail has a bit of a role to play in the Purim story, possibly, but here I'm afraid it means something else. It means bris milah. Says the Medrash, what did Amolek do when they were fighting Klal Yisrael? They would cut off, it's a bit gruesome, they would cut off the bris milah, and they would throw them heavenwards, and they would say, Bezeh bacharta? Hey lecha mashe bacharta. Really, Hashem, this is who you chose? What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on. How did this fight even take place? Because Vayizanev b'cha kol hanecheshalim acharecha. We were inside our security zone. Forget somebody sitting at the gate there, on his mobile. But we're talking about real cosmic protection. We were inside the Ananei HaKovod, the clouds of glory. How did we end up outside? How was Amolek able to penetrate? The answer is, we were hanechesholim acharecha. That word hanechesholim is nachosh milah. These were people from the tribe of Dan who chose to defile themselves and make themselves tomei. Men who chose to make themselves tomei, and the onon, the cloud, spat them out. Poltom ha'onon. And Amolek says, you see, you can be inside the Ananei HaKavod and you can choose to make yourself tomei, and Hashem himself will reject you. I was right. This is what you choose, cutting off the bris milah, throwing them upwards, vayizaneh. This is who you chose. You chose these people. Hashem, you made a mistake. These are not good people. They don't deserve being chosen. And he has a point. What's the response? What's the response? You know what the response is? I didn't have time to put everything I wanted down in the sheets. But remember this. The response is, Moshe says to Yehoshua, Tzei hilachem ba'amalek. Go out. Go out and fight. What does that mean, go out? It's like lahavdil, our soldiers today going into Gaza. Sitting at home, comfortable. You're going into Rafah, you don't know what's going to be. But that's what brother does for brother. Say hilochem ba'amalek. Go out of your comfort zone. Those of you, the Jewish soldiers who are Kadosh, leave the comfort zone of the Ananei HaKavod and go and fight for your brothers. Say hilochem ba'amalek. Demonstrate that you are brothers, because if you are brothers, it means you all have a common Father. And here we begin to get to the root of the point. There is one relationship in the world that is forged entirely in love, and it is one way, it cannot be reversed. It is forged in love and is therefore irreversible. Divorce can happen. You can have a very deep relationship with somebody else, but you both choose to enter into that relationship, and therefore it can be broken. But a father and a son, or a mother and a son, there was no focus group. I wasn't given a choice. Would you like to be born? I had no choice. My parents decided to create me. It's one way. It's irreversible. You can never be an ex-son. There's nothing you can do. Bonim atem la'Hashem Elokeichem. But it all comes back to a choice that the parents made. You have no choice. You can't reverse it. How do I show whether I feel that I am a son of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Bonim atem la'Hashem Elokeichem. It's if I behave that you are a brother and you are a sister. And then I don't need to justify. It doesn't matter who I am or what I have done. I can never, ever, a Jew, Yisrael, afal pi shechata, Yisrael hu. A Jew will always be a Jew. And Amolek, this is not fair. These are people who are Rishoyim. They've chosen to defile themselves. You yourself have rejected them. And wait, we're not finished. It's going to get a lot worse. Look at the end of the second page. Masot var Hashem biyad malachi. Right at the end of Nevi'im. The very last Nevuah. There's a beautiful thing. Now you've got to see this as a nation stretched out on the psychotherapist's couch. Okay? This is the way to read these psukim. This is the way the Malbim explains these psukim. Imagine, I'll put it to you this way. You know, let's say it could be a woman saying to the psychotherapist, you know, I don't think my husband loves me. He might, you know, he puts up with me for my looks, for my money, for my family, for my whatever. My father owns a pub, I don't know, whatever, something. But he doesn't love me for who I am. Self-doubt, right? Sophic. Look at this. Ohavti eschem amar Hashem. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Klal Yisrael, I love you. Va'amartem ba'ameh ahavtanu. How do I know that you love us, Hashem? Maybe you only love us. Do you know why? I'll tell you a story. I don't know if any of you had this experience, perhaps not. Maybe. I remember as a kid, every now and again on Yom Tov, sometimes my parents, we would go on Chol HaMoed. Sometimes they went to London or somewhere else. And they had old friends from Ilford, from old people they were friendly with 30 years ago, before I was born. And they would make us, it was very naughty, it was very wicked, very cruel. They made us, we went to see these people, And my parents and these old people sat and drank tea and schmoozed and had a good old time. And we had to sit there in a room with the kids of these people who I'd never seen before, I will never see again. I have zero in common with them. But our parents are friends, so we just sort of looked at each other. It was very awkward and embarrassing. And usually we were very naughty, and then they would cut it short, and we got, it was good. But listen to this. We say to Hashem, yes, we know you had a very amazing friend called Avraham, our Elta Zayda. We had a good friend, but you don't love me. Okay, you guys are old friends. And this is what we turn around to Hashem and we says, Ba'mei ahav tanu. Says Hashem, how am I going to persuade you that I love you for who you are, not just because you are the children of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? What am I going to do? I've got an idea. Here's an idea. What would be if I could find two children, peas in a pod? Well, not quite, because one of them was a bit red and a bit hairy, and the other one wasn't so red and hairy. But they are twins. They both have a father, one of the Ovos HaKadoshim, and a mother, one of the Imohos HaKadoshos. No, there's no Hagar and I don't know what. No, this is the real deal. They're twins. Yaakov and Esau. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to accept and love and embrace Yaakov forever, and Esau is going to be wiped off the face of the earth at the end of days. Is that good enough proof for you that I love you? Look at this posuk. It's the most unbelievable way of learning a posuk. This is the Heilige Malbim. Ohavti eschem omar Hashem. Says Hashem, I love you for who you are. V'amartem, and we said, Ba'mei ahav tanu. How do I know that you love us for who we are? Says Hashem, haloi och Esav v'Yaakov nu'um Hashem. Esav and Yaakov were twins, both with father. V'oihev es Yaakov v'es Esav sonesi. V'osim es horav shmama v'snachlasei l'saneis midbar. He will be written out of history. V'acharisoi adei oived. And you will have a future. Is that enough reason to show that I love you? Wow. Doesn't get any more real than that. But we're not done. No wonder Esav hates us. He looks into the mirror and he sees a choice from his perspective that is arbitrary. I need to stress this. This is very important. Forgive me, it's a bit philosophical, but I have to do this. There's no other way of understanding this. I need to teach you a bit of Kabbalah. Purim is about Abdullah Yoda. Das is connection. Das is connection that comes after Chokhmah and Bina, different levels of analyzing and understanding. Then there is total intimacy and connection. Das means love and connection. Vayeda Adam eschavo ishtoi, as in carnal knowledge. And there is Das means chibur, total connection. On Purim we're meant to, for some reason, get rid of that. That means we elevate, we go higher, we leave the lower approaches to rationalizing a relationship, and we go back to something that is above that. It's called keser, it's called rotzain, it's called point of origin. Just because I can, says Hashem. That's keser. Just forget, you don't have to understand the word. It means Hashem chose. Choosing, by the way, means where you have two. Choosing is a point of origin and creation. I'll explain this to you. I'll explain to you what I mean. We're now going to look a little bit into Yom HaKippurim and Purim. We all know, everybody knows the Tikkunei Zohar. The Arizal says Yom HaKippurim. It's a day which is like Purim. Purim is much higher. Very nice. But what on earth does it mean? Let's stop for a minute and think about. There's so much we could say, but let's think about one aspect of it. What happens on Yom HaKippurim? We take two twin goats, exactly the same, b'shoveh, b'mareh, b'toima. They have to be exactly the same, two of them. And what do? The Kohen Gadol spins a lot, Purim all over again. He does a goyrol, and one of them gets brought up as a korban in the highest place, in the most elevated place on Yom HaKippurim, and the other one, goodbye, echarisoi adei oved. Do you hear the parallel? And what is it decided by? It seems to be, the correct word in English is capricious. It seems to be just arbitrary. There's no ein tam, there's no reason to it. So there we have already a little bit of a parallel between Yom Kippurim and Purim. Let's take it a bit further. Now, on the next sheet, look at how we start and end Yom Kippurim, and we will discover something amazing. What is the first thing we do on Yom Kippurim? We take the Sifrei Torah out of the Aron HaKodesh, and just before we do Kol Nidrei, the Chazan says 5, 6, 7 times, Oir zoru ala tzadik, uli yishrei leiv simcha. There is light that is seeded for a tzaddik, uli yishrei leiv simcha. And for those who are straight of heart, there is simcha. So there is a tzaddik, and there is somebody called a Yishrei Leiv who is a straight. One gets light and the other one gets joy. Says the Gemara in Tanis that only one gets one and only one gets the other. A tzaddik gets light, but says Rashi, a Yishrei Leiv, somebody who is straight, that means he has no struggles. He is straight. He's not a tzaddik, has to have struggles to overcome. You then get light. But somebody who is naturally just Yoshar Leiv, you get Simcha. But you don't have one which has both. Oh, really? La Yehudim Haisa Ayra Vesimcha. We got both on Purim. That's how Yom Kippurim starts. And how does it finish? We shout 7 times as Hashem recedes back into the Shamayim. Hashem Hu Ha'elokim. Let's delve into this a little bit now. Let's see. Hashem Hu Ha'elokim. Read it from right to left. Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei is 26, Hu is 12, Ha'elokim is 91. This is actually a cosmic formula. I'll explain. Take the name of Hashem. The name of Hashem is Yud, Hey, and Vav, and Hey. But when we have no connection to that name of Hashem, which is pure Rachamim, which is mercy, we do not experience it. We can't even, it would be forbidden for us even to, we don't say it. We can look at it, but we read it Aleph Daled Nun Yud. Okay? So what do we have? We have Hashem has the way it is written and the way it is read. How is it written? Yud Kei Vav Kei, that's 26. How is it read? Aleph Daled Nun Yud, that's how we pronounce it, that's 65. You add them up, you get 91. So Hashem, if you take both aspects of it, the way it is written and the way it is read is 91, who equals Ha'elokim, which is 91. There's balance and symmetry in that phrase. Hashem, Hu Ha'elokim. What's this got to do with the Megillah? There's a whole bunch of things it has to do with the Megillah, but I want to take you, first of all, to understand this. Let's think a little bit about what each of these mean. Elokim is the name that we use for judgment and justice when we don't see things clearly. Aleph Daled Nun Yud is the name we use for din. It has the word din inside of it when there is judgment and justice and we don't see things clearly. Yud Kei Vav Kei is the other side of it. Okay? We would expect to see in the Megillah, what do we have in the Megillah? The Megillah doesn't even have the name of Hashem in it at all. Let me fast forward you a little bit to a beautiful idea, because I'm going to skip over a page, because time's running on. Turn over one page, and we find the following. It's an idea from the Vilna Gaon. The Mishnah says at the beginning of Megillah nikreis ba'achadosor, b'shneimosor, b'shleishosor, b'arba'osor, b'chamishaosor. Depending on the day of the week that Purim falls on, it can be read either on the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, or 15th of Adar, depending on the day of the week, right? Loi pachos v'loi yoser. Not before and not after. Look over the page. I don't know if it photocopied nicely. Says the Vilna Gaon, this is beautiful. Add up 11 and 12 and 13 and 14 and 15. You get, what do you get? 65. So, So the Megillah can be read on the days which add up to the name of Hashem, which is judgment, which is justice. He's hidden. Not until the end of the Purim story do we realize that he was hiding and he was behind everything. It can only be read on those days. Not before, not less, and not more. What's less than 11? 10. What's more than 15? 16. 11 and 16 is 26, would be Yud Kei Vav Kei. The Mishnah is telling us you can't read the Megillah in a way on days that would add up to 26, which is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Only on days which are Aleph Daled Nun Yud. It's a tiny little remez, but it just shows how at every level this idea is present. Let's focus on the written form. If you take Hashem Hu Ha'Elokim, Havaya is 26, Hu is 12, plus 91 is 129. There are three turning points in Megillas Esther which are stressed by the Bal Korah. The first is the entry of Mordechai into the Megillah, Ish Yehudi, where the Bal Korah stresses these are important points. Ish Yehudi Yabeshushana Bira, and then we have Alaylo Hahu Nodadoshanas Hamelech. And the third time is when we emphasize the whole turnabout. We have Umordechai Yatsa Milifnei Hamelech. Do you know what psukim numbers they are? 26, 91, and 129. Hashem, Elokim, and together. That's the number of psukim. If you look in the Megillah, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, I don't have such a mathematical head, but you see that these are the psukim numbers. How many psukim are there in the Megillah altogether? 167, which is the gematria of Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And the last four words of the Megillah is Doiver Shalom L'chol Zaroi, which is Shema Yisrael. So you have it all, but that's all very nice. These are remez, we have hints to Hashem's hidden hand, but we need to take this a little bit deeper. This week's parasha is Vayikra. I'll have to hurry up now a little bit. This week's parasha is Vayikra, and we have in Vayikra, the beginning of Vayikra, we won't have time again to speak about it, but there's a little aleph, and you're left with actually Vayikar, which is also very much in the Megillah. Okay? Haman and Amolek is Keri, which is Hashem, just happens, random, Hashem isn't really running the world. Look at the Medrash on this page here. It's in bold. Says the Medrash, Vayikra el Moshe, Hashem called to Moshe. What do we learn from here? Says the Medrash, Kol Talmud Chacham she'ein bo da'as, nevela toiva heimenu. A Talmud Chacham that does not have da'as. Okay, where have I heard not having da'as? Oh, maybe on Purim. What's a Talmud Chacham that doesn't have da'as? He is worse than a dead animal. Very strong words. What does it mean to have da'as? Because Vayikra el Moshe, Moshe knew that he was meant to go into the Mishkan to hear what Hashem had to say, but he waited. He had derech eretz. You don't go into somewhere if you have not been invited. To do that is not to have da'as. What's the obvious question? I'll speed it up. What does Esther say to Mordechai? Everybody knows, Kol ish v'isha. If you go into the king and you haven't been invited, you'll die. There's no da'as. It's the wrong thing to do. So how could this have been correct? Here's the answer. And with this, we pull all the pieces together. There's a lot more to be said, but I want to pull all of these together. And this is really important. The message of Purim, more than anything else, V'nahapoich hu. That word hu is a really important word. Again, in Kabbalistic thought, we refer to Hashem either as Ani, Ato, or Hu. Ani corresponds to Malchus. It's the one that we can relate to. Ato is Yud Kei Vav Kei, and Hu is third person he. That means I can't even get close. He who refers to Keser, which is pure Rotzain, what Hashem just because he wants. He wants because he wants. It's who, it's out of sight. V'nahapoich who, we say in the Megillah, that who gets turned around. What happens when the who gets turned around? Turn to the last page. Vayomer ki yod al keis ka milchomo laHashem ba'Amolek. It says that Hashem swore. Rashi says over here, Yod, Hashem's hand is on his throne. Yod al Kes Ka. But there's letters missing. I've put it here. Kes should really be Kisei. It has an aleph missing. Ka is only half of Hashem's name. So what is missing? Says Hashem, until I get rid of Amolek, my name and my throne will not be whole. What's missing? Again, look at those letters. Who? But it isn't who. Look at the bottom of the page. Ki vochar Hashem b'tzion iva lemoishav lai. What does that word mean? He wanted ta'ava. Ki vochar Hashem b'tzion iva lemoishav lai. He wanted us. Yaakov bochar loika. Hashem chose us. And Amolek can't get over that. Hashem chose us. The last page I said, the last page. You don't have it? I'm so sorry, you should have it. It's a pain. Don't have this?
Yes, it's just not the last.
Oh, it's not what the last about you. I'm sorry.
Page number 3.
I apologize. Yes. So that's the v'nahapoich who. This is what Hashem wants. Now, what does that mean for us? Let's wrap this up with let me give you some clarity in what's going on. There are two ways that we interact with Hashem. One is learning Torah, and one is tefillah, one is davening. Torah, which is represented by Moshe, a Talmud Chacham, there is a proper time and a proper place. And if you don't have das, if you haven't been called, you can't go in. But tefillah is the ability, the capacity, and the right of every Jew to reach out and to cry to their Father. You don't need permission to speak to your Father. You don't need an invitation, and if you do, achan vei, there's something wrong with that relationship. And you don't need to deserve to speak to him. You speak to him because he is your Father. You just have to acknowledge that relationship. Nothing else. And that is what Purim is about, and that is why Purim is forever. Let's look at what Esther Hamalka said. I hope I'm not confusing you anymore. Tehillim, this page, when it's the Tehillim that she composed as she was going into the king. She said, Eli, Eli, lama azavtani. Why did you... Elohai ekro yomam v'lo saneh v'layla v'lo dumiyavi. I called out to you, we davened, we fasted at night, in the day. V'ato kodosh yoshev tehillos Yisrael b'chabotchu avoseinu botchu vatfalteimai. We trust in you, we rely on you. We have bitachon, and you save us. We cry out to you, b'chabotchu v'lo voishu. We call out to you, and we don't need to be, no Jew ever needs to be ashamed to cry out to the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Tata in the Himmel. You don't need to be ashamed. You just have to acknowledge that relationship. And that is what Purim is about. Turn over the page. Says the Rambam, the reason that we read the Megillah is Kedei lahoidia ledoros haboim. Lahoidia. Where have we heard that word lahoidia? This is what we sing. Lahoidia. To make known to the future generations. She'emes ma shehivtichonu b'Torah. It is true what we have been promised in the Torah, that there is no other nation. Asher lo Elokim krovim elov ka Hashem Elokeinu b'chol koreinu elov. We have the ability and the right, and therefore the obligation, to call out to him whenever we want. B'chol koreinu elov. We don't need to be worthy. We don't need to deserve. That is the message of Purim. Like we say in the bracha, so what do we say in Shoshanas Yaakov? Turn over the page. This is, I'm going to stop here, there is more to say, but this is the message of the Purim story. Amolek has a point. He's angry because does not appear to be any reason. In the words of Reb Tzadok HaKohen, Ein ta'am l'rotzain. Rotzain is rotzain. Hashem Iva. He wanted. He chose us. We are his children. He took 2 peas in a pod and he rejected Esav and loved us. Esav gets finished. He's gone. Ve'evrosoi shomro netzach versus netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. The theme is eternity versus goodbye. And only because we have a suffix, we doubt our own ability. If we really knew, all the poskim, all the mefarshim, all the mekubalim say, if we really knew and felt that every time we daven, in any language, at any point in the day, all the more so when we get together to daven with a minyan and we observe the halachas, all the more so, if we knew and we really felt that our Father in heaven was standing there waiting, and we don't need an invitation. You don't need an invitation. Kol koivecha le'yivoshu. As long as you acknowledge that relationship, that is how the Yeshua of Purim came about. Whether we're deserving, whether we're not deserving. And that's why Amolek is so angry, and he's right to be angry. But it's too bad. Hashem chose us, that's it, game over. And therefore, we are here to stay, and he will be Acharisai Adei Ovid. That is the message of the Purim story. More to say, but we'll stop.